We've got some
Hey,
fresh new
I'm
young
Luis.
talent
And
doing some
I'm
things that I
Luis.
know you haven't
And you're
heard
listening to the
before.
Content is Profit podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to Content. Nope. Okay. Oh, okay. I was saying stop. Welcome back to Content is Profit. Thanksgiving week, the time that we're recording this episode, and we are recording this to say thank you to you, every single person that has supported the show and us as a company. We have a present for you. If you go to www.bizbros.co/monetize, the present is there for you. We actually had a few downloads last week, so huge shout out for everybody that has been tuning into the show and learning more about what we do. Let's go. So, Fonzie, how you doing today? We won quarterfinals. Private live update.
Fun soccer weekend.
I can't walk playing 90 minutes. I'm very sore, but we won. Scored 2 goals. You score a goal. Give an asset. Let's go. Coming out of retirement for those interested in our soccer life.
Yeah, we need to start live streaming the soccer games.
Yeah, we should, so people can laugh. But but anyways, enough about that. So we last week we were featured on an incredible event from Capshow. They did a massive summit. Huge shout out to our partners at Capshow, and part of like the call to action to us was we needed to give something to their community, and we uncovered, right? Dedusted or dusted? No, dedusted, because they were in our Google Drive. But these are resources that we share with customers in studios. Dedusted, like taking the dust out. Is that how you cleaned it up?
It's just dusted.
Dusted.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Let me know in the comments, guys, which one's correct.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm just saying, whatever. Tangent
alert. We'll come back to this. But these couple of resources, we've shared privately with like either people in our group, people that come here to the studio, people that we jump on calls. And we decided to put them out there because those couple principles were the one that allowed us to first cross our first $100,000 in sales with, this is way before the studio. And then continue to elevate and evolve our content to the point that we are now. So we're super proud of these. These are completely original work. Obviously, they're references for other stuff, but it's based on our experience. And we wanted to share on this episode one of them. But again, if you want to skip the episodes, you just go to bizbros.co/monetize and you'll find them there. But Fonzie, talk to me a little bit about the minimal viable content.
The MVC. Yeah, this was one of those moments of clarity years ago when I was sitting down and I was like, boom, I had a download and I just started putting it down. And actually, coincidentally, around that time, I started reading a book about forming habits from BJ Fogg. The book is called Tiny Habits. And it had a graph in there explaining how to make behaviors easy. And I thought it related so much to literally that download that I have about the minimal viable content. So I'm going to read this off of the guide that we have. But the minimal viable content is pretty much the minimal amount of effort that you need to accomplish a desired outcome of content, right? So meaning, do you want to create video on a social platform? Well, what is the least amount of effort and friction that you need to be able to put it, right? So there's a few elements in here. Obviously, you have the motivation to do it and the ease of the skill and maybe, the ease of the tech and all that stuff. So your goal is to manage kind of like that motivation, have a high motivation, but decrease the friction as much as possible so you're able to do the thing. So how does that look like, for example, for us when we started our content journey? For us, it was, we don't want to edit. We don't want to script. We don't want to do all these things. We just want to get used to being in front of the camera.
I'm going to give a little bit of background information of why we didn't want to do all that stuff. Because, you might see a lot of advice online. By the way, we've seen at this point probably hundreds of strategies that all work. But at the point, this was 5-6 years ago. We were trying to mimic Gary Vee's, multi-purposing formula. We wanted to be everywhere at the time, and we didn't really have a formal business at the time. We were almost like freelancing. in our spare time. I was working as a studio manager in a fitness location. Fonzie was making videos for them and doing almost like internal work on their Facebook groups and different things like that. And we will have these random video projects here and there, not only video project, but we did, funnel automations and, anything and everything that an agency could work and we could get a hands of. Well, we'll say yes to that project and dive in and learn and different things. And we had a meeting where we were sitting in front of multiple business owners and there were referrals from one customer that we had. And we did the presentation and one of them said, hey, where's your content? Right. And at the time we were not publishing in our social media accounts. We did not have a podcast. We were almost like ghosts on the web, right? BizRose, I think the page was this like sales letter that I think I wrote without AI or anything, that's very poorly written, but did not sell anything. And that was our homepage.
Was it a sales letter if it didn't sell anything?
I mean, it was an attempt at a sales letter. That would be funny.
It might have just been a letter.
We should just read it and see what happens. But I remember it was like text, BizRose at the top, and then a call to action. But it was something as a homepage that we had at the time. And we closed no business at the time. The conversation continued at that point. And the guy's like, I don't know if I can, trust that you guys can do all this stuff if you guys don't do it yourselves and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I think I would have probably answered that a little bit different today. But what it did was it started the thought process on how can we be present, somewhere consistently, right? And that's when we had a conversation and we're like, okay, based on our resources, which by the way, the next episode that you're going to listen is going to be about that, the publishing pyramid. But based on what we have today, how can we do our minimum viable content based on that definition that Fonzie just said? And what he's about to explain is what we came up with.
Yeah. I mean, keep going, bro.
Oh, keep going. I'm on a roll. I'm good.
I think you're in a roll.
Okay.
Also, my allergies are crushing me right now. It's not gonna lie, it's kind of hard to concentrate.
Yes, Fonzie has been cleaning his house, and apparently there's a lot of dust. De-dusting or dusting?
De-dusting.
But anyway, so at that point, we came back to our little office, and we sat down, and we were like, okay, we need to come up with a plan to be present online, right? And we be consistent. How can we be present every day? And we decided to challenge ourselves to publish at least once a day for 45 days straight. We're coming out of the 75 hard challenge. It was a fitness challenge.
Ripped.
We were definitely not ripped, but we're coming out of successfully completing one of them. And we're like, wow, this was such a great experience. It was so out there that how can we replicate something like that with content? And we did a little bit of an audit of like, okay, what's the time that we have available during the day? What are the tools that we have at our disposal, right? Computer, cell phones. I think we had the podcast equipment then, but we weren't using it.
That one was getting dust.
It was getting dust in the closet. So we decided that we were going to do a live video at the time for, probably less than 5 minutes, but it was going to be live on Facebook. Right. And we start experimenting with like, okay, what are we going to say? What is going to be this thing? And that for us became our minimum viable content. We needed to do within a period of, a block of about 30 minutes. For me was more about 15 minutes, come up with what I was going to say and record it live on Facebook. And then as, the recorder ended, it was already published. So that's what it was. And that's the version 1 of our later what it became the 45 live challenge that we did a couple of times.
Yeah. And this minimal Bible content came after we did the 45 live and we're thinking about why did it work out, right? Like why were we able to stay consistent with this? And then reading Tiny Habits. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
You're dying over there.
The water came.
And then reading Tiny Habits from BJ Fogg, it helped us put together kind of like, if you want to call it the science behind it, right? Like why did those behaviors that we adopted, ended up in helping us be consistent with content. And then we applied the same thing to podcasting, right? Now that we already had a little stronger foundation on creating content. So there's this saying from Dr. Sean Young that I like, which is small steps beat big dreams. So I feel like, going back to what you were saying about Gary Vaynerchuk and when we started is a lot of people start with the big dream of, I want to start a podcast. It has to look as crisp as it can. That was us. We started the podcast with a 3-camera setup, a whole bunch of things that made it impossible for us. And not to mention 11 p.m. at night
Yeah.
Which made it impossible for us to actually publish. When we look at the model, right? Imagine you have a y-axis and x-axis, right?
We can put it here.
Yeah, we're gonna put a little graph,
or here.
But if you're just listening and you are not watching here, imagine you have one line, one vertical line, which is your motivation, and it goes from low at the bottom to very high at the top, and then at the bottom horizontally, you have a perpendicular line to it that is your ability, right? Your skills. And it goes from very hard to do, right? So low motivation and hard to do are connecting on that corner. And then at the very end is easy to do. So again, you have motivation and then you have your ability. Those are like the two things that we're taking into consideration for this. And then in the middle falls like what we call the action line. And you want to fall in the quadrant where you have high motivation and it's something that is easy for you to do. Because when you have high motivation and it's something that really doesn't require too much processing and bandwidth, you will probably do it, right? So, but if something like what we're trying to do, 3 cameras, then we had to edit, we have to plan the episodes. That is very difficult, right? There's a lot of skills that go into that. Not only that, we were doing it at 11 at night, which our motivation is, naturally very, very low late at night. I would argue that that's most people. So we have literally the other spectrum of that quadrant, which is at the very corner where, low motivation meets very hard to do skill set. So we were doing that for a podcast and we struggle and we never published one of those episodes. Now, fast forward to when we did the live, it was at the total opposite end of that quadrant, which is we were doing it when we were feeling the most motivated. My brother might have a different time that I was doing it, right? Because that's when we felt different motivations. But the ability, the skill was going live, which doesn't really take too much ability. I would say the one challenge there was just the mental ability, because I do think it's kind of like a skill to remove yourself, detach yourself from the what are others going to think about me if I put myself out there, right? So I think that was the hardest part of that.
Yeah.
But again, we decreased the friction so much that it was so easy to be on the right side of that action line and then just publish it.
Yeah. I think it helped us also first taking action, right? And your guide, if you go to bizros.co/monetize and you download it,
is even better explained right there.
Yes. We took some time to write it down, but it's going to explain to you also, like, how do you find that minimum viable content, right? The first thing that we got to say is this is 100% subjective, right? Like a multi-million-dollar company, their minimum viable content is going to look very different than maybe a couple of freelancers doing content to advertise their services, right? And we had I think our first agency client with the new model that we had, they fell into that minimum viable content category, but for them was more about the team that they brought into the table to create that type of content, and that they evolved from there. And the only difference is they just had a little bit more resources than if somebody was doing it themselves, right? But here's some questions to maybe trigger you to help you find that minimum viable content, right? So number one, what is your publishing goal? What is your dream outcome when it comes to this? How realistic is that at the moment? So in our specific case, our dream outcome at the time was not, let's find our next client, was like, we need to be present online every single day. That's step number one, right? So that was our outcome at the time. What do you think would be an achievable outcome at that moment? We also had a bunch of ideas. We're like, okay, we should sit here and start the podcast and we should do a daily podcast, for example, or we should do a YouTube video about X amount of topics. And the second we started making a plan for those, we understand that maybe our capacity at the time was not there to be able to produce that type of stuff. And that's why we landed at Facebook Live, because we were readily available with a cell phone. We could do it in about 10 to 15 minutes a day. So, I was driving back and forth. Luca was just like being a newborn at the time. So I was very busy with them. So it needed to be flexible. Like, we had to see all these elements to figure that one out. And that's how we decided, right? Then how much time do you have today, like now, right now, to dedicate to that content. That's when we did our audit. So between service that we're offering, you know, between having to fulfill for that, between having to, you know, continue our outreach, you know, time with the family. In my specific case, I had about 15 to 20 minutes a day to actually sit down and do that. Like I saw my calendar, that's what it was, right? Maybe that later on we opened some capacity, but that was the time I had available. I don't know, what was your case, your specific case? Because I remember seeing you play a little bit with like some editing initially, but yeah, so maybe you had a little bit more time.
I think I just had this, I always do with something that I start new. I'm like, I want to do it nice. I want it to look cool. And yeah, I was playing with some more. I probably allocated a little bit more time to my stuff, but again, is it worth it, right? At the end of the day, like is producing the return of doing just a live the same or improved or worse than having something, you know, that I'm spending more time and intention doing it. So yeah, again, I want to put a parenthesis that it doesn't show on the guide, but is one of our main sayings. And we discovered this also while doing this challenge, which is the quality of the message is more important than the quality of the production, you know, quality of the message over quality of the production. Which
we'll talk about it deeply in the publishing period, the next episode that comes
out. Just keep that in mind, right? Because a lot of people get carried away thinking that good content is good production. But when you just think about your own personal experience, I'm sure you've been sold by, great, good looking content, but at the same time, you've been sold by content that is just a talking head.
Yeah.
Right. So like the production is not the thing, it's not the variable that is going to, you know, maybe produce the result, but the message it is, right?
I mean, that's a follow-up question here. Like, is that time that you're dedicating to this, like, is that realistic, right? Be honest to yourself. Like we've had, I mean, I think everybody can relate trying to, you know, come up with content that you have this incredible idea, but then, you know, you might have kids, you might have family, you might have another job, right? And is that realistic to sit down? It happens to me all the time. I'm a victim of it, right? I record all of my family adventures thinking we're going to do a vlog, and then that stays in the Google Drive, right? Stays there. So there we go.
Got mad with the mic.
Just this morning, I saw this incredible video. Shout out to Think Media. Right, they were having an interview, and two friends, and one of them has a very successful vlog, right? A new style vlog, apparently that's coming out on YouTube. It's not about the full day, and he says, we broke it down. It's almost like the minimum viable vlog for him. That's like what he came to mind. And he says, okay, out of my day, he has different activities that he's doing. And then he chooses one of those activities and does a micro vlog specific to that. So it's like, I'm going to cook X. So the vlog is going to be how to cook X. And that's what it is. He doesn't show buying the ingredients. He doesn't show you brushing his teeth in the morning and telling people he's going to go cook and he's going to go this thing. His vlog is about the situation that's going. It's like that micro moment. Right. And he's been super successful. He said that he's been doing that for about 6 months, and his channel continued to grow faster than his original channel did for the first 6 years. Wow. So incredible. So anyways, he found his minimal viable content in that form with vlogging. Again, we're not telling you to do a Facebook Live. If that works for you, great. We're not telling you to do an Instagram reel. We're not telling you to do like a short. We're not telling you. Find what works for you, what you enjoy doing. I think enjoyment is a great aspect and element to this. Like, do you actually enjoy doing it? To me personally, I enjoy more talking to the cell phone than sitting down and writing a blog post, for example, right? So that's an example. Like Fonzie said, going off of, you know, what is your message? Do you know your message? You know, test, then invest. And I think this is a great opportunity. The faster we put our message out there, the more frequent we put our message out there, the more reps we do, the more we can look at the data and see, like, did I deliver that message correctly? Did I enjoy how we did it? Was it an external response to that?
There's a good story that I like is I guess like an analogy is this art class, or let's say it's a photography class, and the teacher, you know, she has 100 students and she says, okay, half of the class is going, you know, there's only one project that we're going to evaluate for this class that is going to give you your final grade. So half of the class, you guys can take as many pictures as you want, but you can only submit one at the very end of the class to be evaluated. And then the other half of the class, you guys cannot take any pictures. You can only choose one, which is, you can choose one moment to take a picture, and that is the picture that is going to be evaluated, right? And then the question is, which one do you believe are the students that, got the better grade? And I'm assuming your response is going to be the kids that got to practice, the kids that got to do it multiple times, because they developed the skill of, recognizing what is a good photography versus the other guys that were, they only got to do it once. So that is just to illustrate the value of doing things multiple times. You cannot just jump on, let's say on video and pretend that the first time you're going to do is just going to be a home run. And I think a lot of people approach it that way, right? And unfortunately, our perception of reality is very skewed because of social media, because we do probably get feed a lot of the viral stuff, a lot of the popular stuff from social media, right? So we're seeing, videos from these accounts that have thousands of followers, and, one of their videos that are taking off, and we see the video and compare it to ours and say, why mine doesn't do like this, right? And you got to understand that, like, they also had a journey. They probably, for that one video that did really good, they probably had hundreds that did pretty terrible. So forget about that, right? Forget about those results and just focus on you testing it and putting in the volume. This can lead into definitely the debate between quantity and quality. And I think you can do both, right? You can do quantity with quality, right? With intention. Is not about, again, just quality of the production. So make sure you are putting your message out there multiple times and testing it, because that is what's going to give you the indicators of something is working or not. At the end of the day, people are going to vote with their actions, right? Your audience, if they are watching your video, they're voting with their attention. If they are watching your video for, more than 5-10 seconds, then your video is going to start showing to more people. And that's going to be an indicator for you that video works, that topic, that message is good. And then you can go ahead and be like, all right, let me deliver this message again, now in a different way, and move on to the next thing, right? But if that one doesn't work, it's like, okay, let me see how can I tweak my message and test it again to see if that works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think an important element for everybody to think about is also, like, where's your dream audience, right? Like, where are the people that you want to help? Like, where are they hanging out physically and online? And in our specific case, through our story, our community at the time was on Facebook, right? A lot of the people and the connections that we're making at live events were on Facebook. And I think that's what led to the solution of Facebook Live. But again, if YouTube is your place, if you have a community on Instagram, if you have a group on WhatsApp, if you have a group on Telegram, like, where is the people that you are trying to help? I think that's going to help you kind of almost like aim that content at that location and help you a little bit to choose where to start, right? I think you put here something like comfort versus audience location, right? So an example, if your audience is on Facebook, but you like to write copy on Facebook, for example, right?
Yeah.
Does your audience consume podcasts? Then record a podcast, right? And again, it doesn't have to be a daily podcast. I think
it's like a little Venn diagram, kind of like you have your 2 circles or 3 circles, and that overlap right there is kind of like where you want to target that thing.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot, Michelle's story. We share this a lot in our keynotes. Is like she had a physical shop, right? And she was pushed to do a podcast for the last 2 years. We finally met, and we discovered that she did not own any of the equipment, that she didn't enjoy being on camera. She didn't enjoy recording her talking. She really enjoyed writing. So then what we chose to do was a weekly newsletter, because she already had time to write. She was already writing, and then she just allocated some of that to that. So her minimum viable content turned out to be a weekly blog / newsletter that she sent to her email list of people that are coming to the shop. And she got a ton of traction that way. So what are the behaviors stopping you from accomplishing your dream outcome? Example, complicated setups, excessive planning, especially I remember when we started with our podcast, it was like a 2-camera setup, not the right cameras, the ones that had timers on it. We had to build a setup in your room every time we were going to go record. So it added about 45 minutes to an hour to record. And then we're just so exhausted to do it that we're like, you know what, screw this.
Again,
we're not gonna
ability, easy to do, hard to do. That was definitely hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So how can we redirect those behaviors to accomplish the minimum viable content, right? We have to make it super, super easy to start. And we have to ask, a smooth operator, take it from.
There's a cool quote here. If you can make the positive habit 3 to 20 seconds easier to start, your likelihood of doing it rises dramatically. And you can do the same thing by flipping it for negative habits. Watching too much TV, merely take out the batteries out of the remote, control and create a 20-second delay, and it will dramatically decrease the amount of television people will watch. So, for us, it was 45 minutes of setup for that podcast, going now down to 20 seconds or less to start a Facebook Live, because all you got to do is press live and that's it. Open the app, press go live, and that was pretty much it, right? So, that decreasing that initial factor first, it helped us develop the habit of creating content. Yeah.
If you, we can go through a couple of examples. There's people here that come to our studios because we have a setup that looks and sounds incredible. And then all they got to do is walk in, do their thing. They don't worry about the tech. So that's a solution for a specific type of customer. But let's say you might not have the budget to go to a studio. You can set up a little corner in your house with a white wall, maybe some decor in the background. Your phone, if you have an iPhone or an Android today, those records incredible content, right? And maybe with a small investment on a portable mic, you can start creating the content that you want to create, right? You can record voice notes on your phone and in your room next to a blanket, right? And you have audio for a podcast, for example. There's many ways. And if you have any questions on how can you do it with your own resources and maybe what you have now, send me a DM, download this and send me an email with the email that comes to you. We're happy to help you with this, right? But how can you remove all possible friction? We need to achieve high motivation with easy to do and ability, right? So on the document, and I'll leave it at this for last thoughts, but there is 5 ways to succeed with your minimal viable content. So go to www.bistros.co/monetize, and you will see those 5 things at the end of the guide. And I think, I like this a lot. Is like the beginning is what got us unstuck from creating, right? And obviously the content that we do today has evolved quite a bit, and there's still a lot more to learn and continue to evolve. But without those initial reps, I think it will be very, very difficult for us to do what we do. And I think we found specifically our love in podcasting, and and that's what we do today. So
yeah, for me, I love the conversations from the podcast. I think that's what fuels me the most now when creating content. Yeah. So that for me is high motivation, especially when we have somebody that, is very exciting prospect to have on the podcast, and is easy to do because, I love having a good conversation. I love doing research and learning about the other person. And then, I think it meets that criteria and puts me above that action line. So that is personally my zone, right? Where I like to create. I've left behind the Facebook lives, right? And it's not that I don't enjoy them, but I'll say for me, there's a little bit more friction there just because I don't enjoy as much the solo things. But I do love, again, the podcasting. So what about you? Where is your action line? What falls above your action line?
I mean, today, definitely the podcast, right? We've been very blessed to have opportunity to be here in our studio. So the setup doesn't really take much. And I also love the conversations. I love jumping on and trying to, starting that. As you get to do this, you understand that there's some friction points after you're recording, right? With production or your team or different things. Yeah. But apply the same principles. I like, experimenting with new ideas. I think like we experimented quite a bit to try to find what works for me. The other day I sat down in that little box over there and did a reel, almost like a Facebook Live. What it was just reacting to a thought that I had after meeting with a couple of clients. And I was like, let me just record something like this. And that had a ton of traction. So I'm like, oh, that's a good indicator that maybe this is something that I can put in my schedule and test out for the next month, right? So again, my love falls into podcasting. I personally don't think podcasting is for everybody. So that's why we encourage, start trying your minimal viable content with different formats and find what you enjoy doing. We've actually turned away people here in the studio because we do think that they're not fit for a podcast, or what they want to do, it might not be something like that. And when we uncover the conversation, they realize is not the thing that they need. So I encourage, try different things, put in, look at your capacity, your resources. Again, in the next episode, you'll be able to see with the publishing pyramid specifically, what are the 4 things that you need to look for to make a decision like that based on your resources and what you know. So any last thoughts, Fonzie?
Nope. That's it.
Nope.
If you want to learn more, just go to bizbros.co/monetize.
Let's go.
And then get that guide. Hit us up. Send us a message when you go through it. If you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to help you out.
Awesome. Guys, with that said, thank you so much for tuning to the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at BizBrosCo.
That is right. If today's episode helped you move one step closer towards your goal, please don't forget to share this episode. And of course, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.
BizBros.co/monetize.
Monetize.